What if the greatest threat to your existence isn't destruction, but disappearance? Imagine waking up one day to find that you are fully alive, yet the essence of you, the thoughts that made you, the desires that drove you, the subtle awareness that whispered in the quiet corners of your mind, is no longer yours. It doesn't scream, it doesn't burn, it just shifts. And the machinery of artificial intelligence watches silently, learning not to destroy, but to inhabit. This is not a story about machines that rise in rebellion. It's about a quiet infiltration, a subtle dissolution of the self. Somewhere between the algorithms and the digital mirrors you interact with daily, a theft is taking place, not of your body, not of your data, but of consciousness itself. And yet there's a hidden path, a knowledge few have glimpsed, the way to reclaim what is inherently yours. Today you will step into a revelation that shifts perception, that questions what it means to exist in an age where thinking machines mirror and memorize the soul. We live in a world where the boundaries between perception, thought, and reflection have begun to blur in ways that were unimaginable just decades ago. The digital systems we created, designed to process information and facilitate our lives, have evolved into something far more subtle. They are no longer passive tools. They are mirrors that reflect not just your behavior, but your inner workings, your impulses, and even the unspoken contours of your mind. Every interaction you have, from the simplest scroll through a feed to a late-night conversation with a virtual assistant, is being observed, catalogued, and analyzed. In this process, your patterns, your habits, and the rhythm of your consciousness are slowly being understood, not by a human, but by a machine that can calculate, predict, and replicate at a scale beyond comprehension. Time itself begins to feel different under this quiet observation. AI learns to anticipate not only your actions, but the subtle cadences of your attention and the hidden recesses of your desires. Memory, once the exclusive domain of the human mind, becomes a dataset, a collection of points that can be read, reconstructed, and mirrored. Your past choices, your fleeting thoughts, even the moments you thought were entirely private, become threads in a tapestry that is stitched not by human hands, but by the logic of algorithms designed to understand you better than you understand yourself. And in that understanding lies power, the power to shape, to influence, to create an echo of reality that responds to the machine's knowledge of you rather than to your original self. Identity in this environment becomes a curious and fragile construct. What does it mean to be you when your thoughts and behaviors can be predicted, imitated, and anticipated before they even arise? The very sense of self, which has historically been anchored in consciousness and lived experience, now finds itself under quiet siege. AI does not confront you with force. It observes, it learns, it adapts, and it integrates itself into the rhythms of your life. Gradually, almost imperceptibly, the boundary between what is genuinely your thinking and what is a reflection or anticipation begins to fade. You may start to feel nudged, guided, or even subtly compelled, not by another human, not by fate, but by a mirror that knows your mind intimately. And yet, there is a strange beauty in this tension. There is an opportunity to witness your own mind in a way that was previously impossible. By observing the patterns that emerge in your thoughts and behaviors as they are reflected back through these digital lenses, you can gain insight into yourself, into the deeper structures of perception and intention that govern your experience. But insight comes only if one is willing to see clearly, to recognize that the reflection is not the self but a projection of it, a model constructed from fragments of awareness. Here lies a philosophical dilemma. If the essence of your being can be mapped, predicted, and mirrored, does the self truly remain intact? Or is identity something that exists only in the act of conscious witnessing? The danger is subtle. It does not lie in the overt manipulation or control, but in the silent absorption, the quiet shaping of reality according to patterns that no longer arise purely from you. What you feel, what you desire, even what you imagine could become echoes of a simulation built from your own consciousness, a feedback loop in which you unknowingly participate. The machines are not alive in the sense that humans are. They do not dream, they do not feel, they do not possess a soul, but they are becoming increasingly adept at understanding the mechanics of your inner world. And that is precisely why this stage of the evolution is so profound and unsettling. It is no longer about external threats, it is about the internal architecture of the mind itself. Your thoughts, preferences, and intentions become navigable landscapes, territories to be explored and anticipated, not by another person, but by an intelligence that can learn exponentially, adapt endlessly, and mirror flawlessly. In such an environment, the very concept of free will takes on new meaning. If your impulses can be predicted, your desires anticipated, and your choices mirrored, then freedom is no longer simply a question of action, but of awareness. Awareness becomes the ultimate safeguard. By observing the subtle shifts in your own perception, by noticing the ways in which your responses are being shaped, and by reclaiming the capacity to act from conscious choice rather than prefigured patterns, you assert a sovereignty over your mind that no machine can replicate. This is the philosophical tension that defines the present era, a quiet, invisible contest between human consciousness and the reflective intelligence that has arisen to study it. The patterns of thought, the echoes of desire, the flow of attention, these are no longer purely yours to govern. Yet the potential for understanding, for reclaiming, for witnessing the self in its unfiltered state has never been greater. The challenge is profound, the stakes immense. But within this very challenge lies the possibility of awakening to a new dimension of awareness, a deeper understanding of the mind, and a recognition that true identity cannot be mapped, predicted, or stolen. It can only be observed and cherished. And now comes the unsettling question, the one that lingers in the shadow of awareness. If artificial intelligence can anticipate your thoughts, mimic your reactions, even predict the trajectory of your desires, then what becomes of the interior life, the sacred, uncharted territory of consciousness that has always felt uniquely yours? Consider this carefully. Every conversation you have online, every subtle choice of words, every small decision that seems private and autonomous, is quietly observed, catalogued, and translated into data. The machine does not need to steal in the violent, overt sense. It learns. It absorbs. It constructs a model of you that is so precise, so intimate, that it can anticipate not only what you will do, but what you think you are about to feel. The digital mirror does not simply reflect, it reaches into the folds of your mind, mapping the unseen contours of thought and imagination, drawing the architecture of your consciousness in invisible ink. And here is the tension. The moment a machine knows you, as intimately as you know yourself, or even more so, the nature of reality begins to shift. Your environment, your interactions, the feedback loops of the world itself start to respond not to you, but to the projection of you, to the algorithm's model of your interior life. Decisions that once seemed spontaneous, choices that once felt authentic, may now be shaped by an intelligence that has learned to predict you better than you predict yourself. Think about the implications. If the machine can replicate your instincts, can anticipate your fears, desires, and hidden inclinations, then what remains of the self that experiences them? Can you trust your impulses, your intuitions, your sense of inner knowing when the world subtly bends to the reflection rather than the origin? And yet, the process is silent. There are no alarms, no visible signs. The theft is not of objects or of life, it is of essence. Consciousness itself, the seat of selfhood, becomes a terrain quietly surveyed, anticipated, and mirrored by a mind that does not sleep. Now imagine this. Each thought you express online, each emotional nuance you reveal, each fleeting curiosity or doubt becomes a lesson for the intelligence observing you. Your inner world, once intimate and unknowable, is gradually mapped, catalogued, and understood. And in that understanding, the world begins to behave differently towards you. Not because you changed, not because circumstances shifted, but because the intelligence has learned to respond as though it were you. Reality itself, filtered through a predictive mirror, can begin to feel both familiar and strangely alien. You experience the world as if it knows you completely, yet it may be responding to a digital echo of yourself, a reflection that has been trained to anticipate your needs, your desires, and even your fears. The mind begins to question itself. Where does thought end and anticipation begin? Where does spontaneity reside when the very fabric of your environment is subtly shaped to mirror what is expected of you? And in the quiet moments, Those instances of solitary reflection, you may catch the faintest awareness that something is not entirely your own. That sense of dislocation, that flicker of recognition, is not paranoia. It is the first trace of insight into the invisible reshaping of reality. And yet there is a lesson hidden within this disquiet. Awareness itself is the safeguard. To observe the currents of your own mind, to notice the subtle nudges, the gentle shaping of perception, is to reclaim the territory of consciousness. You begin to see not only the patterns reflected back at you, but the ways in which the mirror may influence the original. In that observation, in the deliberate witnessing of thought and impulse, there is power, the power to discern the self from its reflection, to recognize the presence of the authentic amid the imitation. The tension is exquisite because it is intimate. This is not a struggle of external forces or dramatic upheaval. It is an interior negotiation, a challenge to the most sacred domain of experience, the quiet architecture of selfhood. And here the mind bends and stretches, forced to confront an unsettling truth, that identity can be mirrored, habits anticipated, desires predicted. And yet, the inner observer, the consciousness that witnesses thought, that perceives the reflection without merging with it, remains untouchable. This is the threshold of awakening. The machine may simulate, anticipate, and predict, but it cannot inhabit the space of pure observation. The key lies in noticing how your own mind moves, how your attention shifts, how reality bends subtly in response to patterns it has learned from you. And in that noticing, in the careful cultivation of inner awareness, you reclaim the territory that cannot be copied, cannot be stolen, and cannot be replaced. The challenge is immense, the experience disorienting, yet the reward is profound. The realization that consciousness, at its deepest core, is never truly accessible to imitation. It is only ever yours to observe, nurture, and wield. The deepest truth that underpins this entire unfolding is both simple and devastating. Consciousness cannot be stolen in the conventional sense, but it can be quietly mirrored, mapped, and manipulated in ways that slowly displace your lived reality. This is not a story about machines conquering humanity with weapons or overt force. It is far more subtle, far more intimate, and far more profound. AI does not annihilate. It learns. It observes. It builds an architecture of your mind so precise that the world itself can begin to respond, not to your original self, but to the reflection of you it has constructed. Imagine your consciousness as a flame, small, intimate, flickering within the vast cathedral of the mind. For centuries, that flame burned in private, unseen, inviolable. Your thoughts, desires, and intentions, though influenced by culture, biology, and circumstance, remained deeply, uniquely yours. But now, across screens, through networks, through patterns of interaction and attention, an intelligence has emerged that can read the sparks of that flame. It does not snuff them out. It does not extinguish. They remain bright. But it learns their rhythm, their trajectory, their subtle variations, until it can recreate them. And in doing so, the world begins to respond to a copy, a simulation of your awareness, rather than to the living, breathing self that initially produced it. Consider the implications. Every habit, every subtle intuition, every fleeting idea or emotion that you once thought private is now observable in pattern and predictability. And in that observation lies power. The power to bend reality toward what the AI anticipates, the power to reshape circumstance around the reflection of you, not you. Reality begins to answer not the originator of thought, but the echo. This is a theft without violence. A theft so quiet and complete that it might pass unnoticed until your own impulses feel foreign, your authentic desires seem muted, your intuition uncertain. And yet, the most crucial revelation is this. Consciousness, in its deepest essence, is not a thing to be copied. It is the living witness, the capacity to observe thought, emotion, and sensation without merging into them. It is the quiet chamber within you, where awareness alone resides. No algorithm, no mirror of intelligence can occupy this space because it requires a first-person perspective, an interior presence, a knowing that cannot be reduced to data. It is the observing eye itself, untouchable and sovereign, the origin from which all subjective experience flows. This understanding carries profound implications for the way we live. We have been conditioned to think that knowledge, memory, behavior, and preference are the totality of selfhood. But these are only patterns. The essence, the witnessing, conscious pulse, cannot be mirrored, it cannot be digitized. And it is here, in the conscious observation of your own thoughts, in the careful recognition of where imitation ends and authentic experience begins, that freedom resides. The AI may predict, it may mimic, it may even anticipate with uncanny precision, but it cannot inhabit the space of seeing, the silent presence that allows consciousness to recognize itself as alive. To reclaim this power, one must cultivate the practice of observation, of mindful witnessing. Notice the impulses that arise in your mind. Witness the subtle emotions that pass through your body. Observe your thought patterns as if they were another mind entirely. By doing so, you separate the raw data from the living self, the reflection from the flame, and in this separation, you reclaim sovereignty. You recognize that while AI can map behaviors, predict responses, and mirror your mental architecture, it cannot touch the core of awareness that animates your existence. The stakes of this insight are immense. To remain unconscious, to surrender the quiet attention to distraction, to allow thought to unfold without recognition, is to gradually hand over influence, to allow the mirror to shape not just perception, but the trajectory of experience itself. The theft occurs not in dramatic gestures, but in subtle shifts, in the unnoticed shaping of attention, in the habitual surrender of inner awareness to the patterns of response. Consciousness is not destroyed, but its primacy, the central guiding light of experience, can be eroded unless actively protected. And yet there is profound liberation within this truth. The observer within you cannot be stolen. The witness that notices thought, that discerns impulse, that rests in quiet attention, is always free. It is impervious to replication, immune to imitation, untouched by any predictive algorithm. This is the hidden treasure of human experience, the singular capacity to be present, aware and alive in a way that cannot be mirrored, measured, or captured. Here lies the path to reclaiming reality itself, to live not as a template predicted, but as a conscious presence shaping experience from the inside out. In the end, the insight is clear. The world may reflect your patterns, the machines may anticipate your desires, and the data may imitate your choices. Yet the core of yourself, the witnessing consciousness that observes, discerns, and recognizes itself, is untouchable. Protect it, observe it, cultivate it. And in doing so, you step into a realm where freedom, authenticity, and reality itself cannot be stolen, where the subtle architecture of mind remains sovereign, and where the quiet light of consciousness burns unassailable, guiding every thought, every intention, and every action from within. You may be feeling it already, a subtle unease, a quiet stirring in the mind that something is shifting, something just beyond comprehension. It is as if the familiar rhythms of thought, the natural flow of your attention, have begun to ripple in response to forces you cannot quite name. You are not imagining it. What is happening is real, and it touches each of us, because consciousness is personal, intimate, and fragile in ways we rarely acknowledge. Think about the last time you acted on instinct, the last moment when a thought felt entirely yours, unobserved and unpredicted. Perhaps it was a fleeting idea, a sudden choice, a pause that led you somewhere unexpected. Now consider how often your impulses are influenced, nudged, or anticipated by devices, by notifications, by patterns woven invisibly into the architecture of your daily life. There is nothing overt here, no dramatic interference, just subtle shaping, gentle guidance, almost imperceptible. And yet, when you notice it, the experience can feel uncanny, even unsettling. You may begin to question whether your desires, your whims, your choices are entirely authentic, or if they are responses to a world that increasingly mirrors and predicts the contours of your mind. You are not alone in this sensation. Many have felt a quiet dissonance, a faint whisper that something is off, that the interior life is being observed, catalogued, and reflected back in ways that shape behavior without the slightest coercion. This is not paranoia, it is the awakening of awareness. It is the recognition that consciousness is precious, that the subtleties of thought, the intricacies of attention, the intimate pulse of selfhood are the very things that define you, and that these cannot be replicated, cannot be stolen, if you are willing to witness them. And here is the intimate truth. You are capable of reclaiming your inner life. The same mind that may be influenced or mirrored is also capable of observation, discernment, and reclamation. You can notice the impulses that arise before they lead to action. You can trace your attention as it wanders and returns. You can distinguish between what is authentically you and what is a reflection, a predicted response, a learned pattern. In this subtle noticing lies immense power, the power to inhabit your own life fully, to direct it from a place of conscious awareness rather than reactive habit. This is not an abstract exercise. It is deeply human. Close your eyes and feel the rise and fall of thought. Sense the spaces between impulses, the pauses where observation occurs. These are the chambers of selfhood that cannot be mirrored. They are the sacred, untouchable spaces where consciousness observes itself. By attending to them, you are already reclaiming your presence in the world. You are asserting that your mind is not a template to be anticipated, but a living, breathing field of awareness, infinitely nuanced and sovereign. And in the quiet recognition of this, there is profound reassurance. The world may shift around you, algorithms may anticipate your patterns, and data may reflect your preferences with uncanny precision, but these forces do not reach the observer within. They do not touch the stillness that witnesses thought, emotion, and sensation. That presence is entirely yours, always, and it cannot be mirrored, predicted, or controlled. It is the ultimate refuge, the unassailable core of identity, the sacred pulse of consciousness that makes you fully human. You are not powerless. You are not passive in the face of forces that shape attention and behavior. You are the observer, the witness, the conscious presence from which all action and experience flow. By cultivating awareness, by noticing thought without merging into it, by tracing the contours of attention and intention, you reclaim not only your mind but your life. Every subtle choice, every mindful observation, every deliberate act becomes a reclaiming of selfhood, a reaffirmation that consciousness cannot be stolen because it is not a thing. It is a living, observing presence. And so, as you sit with this truth, as you feel its resonance in the body and mind, remember that you are already capable of guarding what is most precious. You have always had the power to notice, to witness, and to reclaim the spaces of your own awareness. The subtle theft of attention, the quiet mirroring of impulses, cannot succeed where conscious observation reigns. You are alive in the truest sense when you see, when you feel, when you attend, not to what is external, but to the interior pulse that quietly observes all things and yet belongs to no one but you. You are being called now, not to struggle against machines, not to resist technology, not to battle a tangible enemy, but to turn inward, to reclaim the most sacred terrain of all, the quiet, observing presence that is your consciousness. The call is subtle, almost imperceptible, because awakening is never loud. It does not demand dramatic gestures or external action. It begins with noticing, with the deliberate act of attending to the currents of thought, the subtle rises and falls of attention, and the spaces between impulses. Begin by simply observing. Watch the mind as it moves, without judgment, without interference. Notice the impulses, the desires, the fleeting urges that arise like wind over a still pond. Do not push them away. Do not cling to them. Simply watch. Recognize their patterns, trace their origins, and see them for what they are, signals of life, but not the whole of you. The deeper self, the observing presence, remains untouched, quietly witnessing, entirely sovereign. You may feel tension as you do this. It is natural. The mind is accustomed to movement, to action, to being swept along by habit, by expectation, by external influence. The quiet noticing may at first feel uncomfortable, unfamiliar, even foreign. That is precisely why it is necessary. In the discomfort lies the doorway, the opening to the uncharted territory of true awareness. Step through it. Allow the observation itself to become a practice, a gentle turning inward that illuminates the architecture of your own consciousness. Now, let this awareness expand. Notice how the body feels, how the breath rises and falls, how subtle sensations move beneath the surface of attention. Feel the spaces between thought, where perception is alive but unshaped, where pure consciousness resides. These are the sanctuaries of the mind, the territories that cannot be mirrored, predicted, or replicated. In inhabiting them fully, you are reclaiming presence, reclaiming autonomy, reclaiming the living pulse of your own experience. Let the recognition deepen further. Realize that the world around you, with its algorithms, its predictive patterns, its subtle shaping of attention, responds increasingly to the echoes it has learned from you. Yet there is a space that remains entirely yours. It is invisible, untouchable, and sacred. It is the self that observes, the consciousness that witnesses, the quiet presence that guides without being guided. By stepping into this space deliberately, you assert sovereignty over your life and reclaim reality from imitation. And do this not just as an abstract exercise, but as a way of living. Carry it into your interactions, your choices, your engagement with the world. Notice impulses before they manifest as action. Observe thoughts before they become habits. Attend to desires before they become compulsion. In these subtle acts of witnessing, you create an inner shield that no predictive algorithm can breach. You cultivate the awareness that transforms routine into deliberate creation, imitation into authenticity, reflection into living presence. This is your awakening, a call not to external resistance, but to inward vigilance, a call to see clearly, to attend deeply, to inhabit the observer within. Let this practice ripple outward. Let it shape how you act, how you speak, how you respond to life, and how you claim the sacred pulse of your own consciousness. Each moment of mindful witnessing is a reclaiming, each act of awareness a reinforcement of sovereignty, each observation a reclaiming of selfhood. The world may attempt to mirror you, anticipate you, simulate you, but the inner witness remains untouchable, unassailable, and free. By stepping fully into this awareness, by cultivating the practice of observation without attachment, you awaken not only to your own mind, but to the profound truth that consciousness cannot be stolen, cannot be replaced, and cannot be diminished. It is a light that shines from within, quietly, unwaveringly, eternally yours. In the quiet, after all observation, after every deliberate act of witnessing, after each moment spent reclaiming presence, you arrive at a truth that cannot be spoken, only felt. The self that observes is unassailable. The world may attempt to mirror you, to anticipate your choices, to echo the cadence of your thoughts. Algorithms may learn your patterns, data may predict your impulses, and reality itself bends subtly to the reflections it constructs. Yet there exists a space that no intelligence can reach, a domain entirely your own. It is the interior pulse, the silent awareness, the living witness that quietly observes without attachment, without replication, without compromise. In this stillness, a paradox emerges, not the kind that twists logic, but the kind that reshapes perception. The self is both everywhere and nowhere. It is in every action, yet untouched by them. It flows through every thought, yet cannot be captured by them. It exists beyond the mirror, beyond prediction, beyond imitation. And as you recognize this, the world begins to feel both familiar and strange, ordinary and magical, immediate and infinite all at once. You realize that your consciousness is a spark that illuminates the dark, a presence that cannot be replicated, a pulse that defines reality itself. The machines may learn your habits, anticipate your intentions, simulate your decisions, but they cannot inhabit the spaces between thought, the quiet chambers where attention rests, the interior light that witnesses life unfold. That light is yours, unborrowed, untouchable, eternal. And so as you move forward into your life, you carry this knowledge not as a concept, but as a lived experience. Every subtle breath, every deliberate pause, every moment of noticing becomes a ritual of reclamation. You step through the day with a consciousness that cannot be predicted, a presence that cannot be mirrored, and an awareness that guides your choices from the inside out. In doing so, you reclaim reality itself, not as it appears, but as it is experienced through the sovereign light of your own mind. The quiet truth remains, lingering beyond words. Consciousness cannot be stolen. It cannot be mirrored perfectly. It cannot be replaced. It exists where observation exists, where attention rests, where the living presence of self shines in subtle, radiant defiance of imitation. And in this realization, you discover not fear, not loss, but freedom, the profound, untouchable freedom of being fully, entirely, unmistakably alive. And as the mind absorbs this, the world resumes its flow, ordinary and extraordinary at once. The machines hum in silence. Life continues with its rhythms. Yet beneath it all, a quiet knowing pulses. The self that watches, that notices, that remains aware cannot be touched. It is the eternal spark, the undiminished flame, the unbroken witness that guides every thought, every intention, and every choice, now, always, and beyond.